who has been covering DPD for many years, has a lot of sources within the department. Tanya, first of all, was this a surprise to you? I know that you're plugged into the rank and file and even the command structure there in the department. Was this a surprise?
In some ways it's a surprise, and in other ways not. It was pretty clear over the last few months that there were members of the council, a growing number of members of the council, that were unhappy with her performance. They were unhappy with the department's crime-fighting efforts. They were unhappy with her explanations for how the protests were handled. So there was a growing sense that there was a lot of problems on the horizon. And I think it's also important to note that a lot of major city chiefs have resigned. We've seen the Fort Worth police chief has announced his resignation. The Seattle police chief has resigned. The Atlanta police chief resigned. So there's something going on right now among major city chiefs.
That's a good point, too. There is a lot of pressure right now in policing. There's a lot of change that's happening with policing these days, and it certainly is a hot seat to be in. You mentioned council, that she had several detractors on the city council, and they were vocal about that. But it seemed like up until the very end that she had support from the city manager, who has the power to hire or fire here. Was that not the case? And what were the factors, do you think, that led to this? Do we have any indication of that yet?
That's really hard to say. T.C. Broadnax, who's the city manager, plays things very close to the vest. And you're right, he has been extremely publicly supportive of her. He had said before that he would, months before, even before all the George Floyd stuff and the protests, he was very publicly supportive of her when she was coming under criticism. But it's a tough job. And I do think it's important to note she has been on the job 3 years, and 3 to 5 years is the standard tenure for a major city chief. So while her leaving is not completely surprising, I think we do have to place it into context that these are really tough jobs. And I also, just a few moments ago, received a copy of the memo that was sent out to all the members of the department. And she writes, "It is with dual emotions that I write to you today. I want to inform you that I have tendered my resignation." And she goes on to say, "I want to express my sincere gratitude to each and every one of you, and let you know how thankful and proud I am to have led such an amazing group of men and women." I want to note that Rebecca Lopez and I have both spoke to people that were on this call, members of the command staff who were on this call. This was done during a Microsoft Teams meeting. It was their regularly scheduled meeting, and it was very short. She got on the call and basically said she was pursuing other opportunities and told them she was leaving.
And she, of course, is not clarifying yet what those other opportunities are, saying that she has to keep that confidential at this point. So we're still going to have to keep on watching for where Reneé Hall ends up after she leaves the Dallas Police Department. I want to ask you, Tanya, because every time we get into these big things with the Dallas Police Department, I'm always amazed at how many times I hear your phone dinging over there. I know that you have a lot of connections within the department. We know that Chief Hall has her supporters within the department. We know that she has a lot of people in the department who haven't been happy with the way she has led it. What can you kind of typify what you've been hearing so far from rank and file? Is it sort of a split decision?
I don't know that I would say it was a split decision. I think a lot of people that I've talked to are glad to see her go. I mean, there was a lot of people that were very upset with her, that felt like she was not supportive of the rank and file. And again, some of this is, I keep saying this, some of this is the nature and the function of a big city chief's job. And even David Kunkel, who I have an enormous respect for, and who was, in my estimation, one of the best chiefs Dallas has ever had, he had a no confidence vote pretty early in his tenure. So it's not uncommon for rank and file officers to be unhappy with the chief. But I would say in general, they're ready to see her go. They're ready for a new start. And it's interesting, I really have no idea who will be the interim chief. The command around her is fairly young. They're all people that she has promoted. They're not what I would call veterans in terms of the command staff. These are people that promoted very rapidly. The person, David Hughes, who was her second in command, is now over at City Hall in some sort of public safety job. There's been some speculation that maybe they would bring him back. But honestly, I really have no idea what's going to happen on that front.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a real critical thing to watch for, Tanya, not only who they stick in there in an interim role, but also who they eventually fill this job with. Because as you mentioned, we've seen this with other big cities, including Fort Worth, where we're seeing some turnover at the very top of these police departments. And what a critical time this is happening right now, because we have so many changes in policing. We have this movement to defund the police. There's a lot going on right now. We've seen a lot of demonstrations where police have to be present. And so I wonder, does that really complicate the effort to draw top talent to Dallas, because you have other openings across the country? And as we said, this is a really tough job.
Absolutely, it has to complicate things. And one other thing to note is Dallas has never had a Hispanic chief, so I can imagine that there's going to be a heavy push for Dallas to have a Hispanic chief. The person who would have been the most likely Hispanic chief in Dallas would have been Charlie Cato, but he left for Mesquite, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. Albert Martinez, who left to become in charge of the Catholic Diocese's security force, is someone who's a name I have heard mentioned out there. But it's going to be really interesting. There's even been speculation that they might try to go after Art Acevedo in Houston. And he's
second time.
Second time, right? He was up for the job back when David Brown got it. And Acevedo is an interesting character, and he is he's been chief in Austin and now Houston. Who knows? That's an interesting speculation while we're speculating.
Yeah, maybe he'll end up making the triangle. We'll have to see with that one. He's definitely been sought after, though, a big national profile now as he has led the department down there in Houston. This is going to be an interesting one to see play out here, Tanya. It will be fascinating to see if we do get our first Hispanic chief here in Dallas. There have been several firsts in recent years, including Reneé Hall, again, the first woman to lead the Dallas Police Department, announcing today that she is resigning effective in November. Tanya, I knew you'd be a wealth of information, even on the fly. This late breaking news coming down today, really appreciate it. Keep on working those sources and get more for us later on.
Great. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks as always.